You don't have a job and you only finished middle school. Panelists, I'm done with you. I'm not going to let some old woman take advantage of me. Never. Just pack your things and leave. I've been married to you for a long time, so be thankful. Are you asking for a divorce? Then he yelled, don't ask me to take you back. You know what I mean. Should I make it clearer? You're too dumb to get it. Are you going to divorce me and marry my sister instead? They stared at each other in shock. My name is Jane. I live with my husband, Tim. I'm in my late 50s, and he's 5 years younger than me. I have a younger sister who went to college with my husband. She's the reason I met him. We have 2 children, both of whom are grown up and have their own families. At my age, I often think about the past. A lot has happened in my life. I'm happy to have had 2 children, but I'm not happy with my husband. He makes fun of my education and says I only have a middle school diploma. He always says this when we argue. My husband is right. I only finished middle school. I wanted to go to high school, but we were very poor. Back then, the internet wasn't around, and the world felt small. So, I followed my parents' advice, graduated from middle school, and got a job. My sister, who is 5 years younger, graduated from college because I worked hard to support her. I didn't want her to struggle like I did, so I worked extra hard. Luckily, she was a great student. She got into a top university, and my husband, who went to the same school, is really proud of it. Whenever we argue, he brings up his education. When we first met, he never acted like he was better than me. When we got married and had our first daughter, I was so happy, but slowly, that happiness faded. Back then, it was common for women to quit their jobs after getting married. I planned to quit and focus on raising our child, but my husband wouldn't let me. He wanted me to work full-time, take care of the house, and raise our child, but when our first son was born, he quit his job. I thought he'd let me be a stay-at-home mom, but he didn't help. Housework and childcare were still my responsibility. If he wasn't going to help, I thought at least he could bring in money. I was scared I wouldn't be able to raise 2 kids alone. I worried about money. 6 months after he quit his job, I said, "It's time for you to find a job." He snapped, "Who do you think you're talking to? You're the only one here. It's been 6 months. Are you going to stay unemployed? You can't tell me what to do." I sighed and said, "Not again. Unlike you, who only finished middle school, I'm someone special. Good for you. So, I guess you'll reach your big goal soon. If I want a job, I'll get one. You don't get to pick my job. I can choose whatever I want." "Oh really? Then pick one." "I can't. There's no job I want." He may have graduated from a top university, but he couldn't earn a living. If he didn't do anything, his degree was just a piece of paper. At least he should do something for the family. What kind of idiot are you? It's ridiculous for me to do it, right? You're the one who gave birth to the kids. You should be grateful. I've stayed with this man for so many years without divorcing him because of the situation we were in. In our time, people would turn against you if you got divorced. It wasn't just the mother who suffered, people would talk about the kids too. I really didn't want that to happen. But now, my kids are grown, and I think it's okay to end things with him. I'm about to retire, and I'm starting to think that getting a divorce at this age might actually be a good thing. Just imagining it makes my future seem brighter. I've been studying for my high school equivalency exam for a while. With the kids grown up, I have more time to study, and I finally passed the exam. I haven't told my husband about it yet. I know he would just make fun of me if I did. The other day, I got the letter of acceptance. I also got a call from my sister. "Hey, how's it going? I'm on my way over. You're home, right? What's going on?" "Well, I'm home." "Okay, I'll unlock the door in 10 minutes. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my sister really showed up. "What's wrong? How's your husband?" "We got divorced." "What? When?" It was about 6 months ago." "I didn't know that." "I didn't tell you. By the way, do you have an extra room?" "No, we don't." "Yes, you do. The kids are all grown up." "Yes, but I've kept their rooms in case they want to visit." "Then the guest room is free." "Well, it is. I'll just stay there then." "Okay. I'm moving in today." "Wait, isn't that a little too sudden?" "No, it's fine. I've already talked to Tim about it." "That's right. I told her to come if she needed help." Just then, my husband came home from the store. "Why did you decide this without asking me?" "It's strange. Your sister is in trouble. You should be helping her. That's why people who only finish middle school are idiots." "You're right, and she doesn't help anyone. Judy always sides with him against me. I know she's been like that, but I can't stand it anymore. I've done so much for her. She's still my family, but I can't help feeling bitter about it. After that, I had no say in the matter. I started living with Judy, and I was the only one working in the family. Judy and Tim did nothing every day. If you're staying at someone's house, at least help out. Why isn't Tim paying or doing anything? Oh, Jen, you must have had a hard time since you only finished middle school. You're really obsessed with money. I was shocked. After a while, Judy and Tim started going out together. What bothered me the most was how they acted around each other. It seemed like they were more than just family, they acted like lovers. I see, I'll have to figure this out. The truth about all this. It wouldn't be surprising if they ended up in a relationship, considering how little sense they have. I hired an agency to investigate them, and a week later, the results confirmed what I expected. They were having an affair. When I told my kids, they agreed I should get a divorce. Now, I had no regrets. I decided to wait for the perfect time to leave. While they were away, I worked toward my law degree. It all started when I was working as a janitor at a lawyer's office. There, an employee told me he passed the bar exam at 69 years old. I was inspired. I thought it was amazing that someone in their 70s could still take on a challenge. Hearing that, I decided I'd take on the challenge too. The day I retired finally came. I came home, and Tim and Judy had strange smiles on their faces. I want to talk to you. What's going on? You retired today, right? So, you're unemployed now. How will you survive without a job and with only a middle school education? Enough, I'm done with you both. I won't let an old woman like me take advantage of you. Pack your things and get out. I've been married to you for years, so be grateful. In other words, you want a divorce? He yelled, don't ever ask me to take you back. You know what I mean, you just don't get it. Are you planning to divorce me and marry Judy? They both looked at each other in surprise and started laughing. You knew? Fine, let's do this quickly. I don't need you anymore. If you really want to stay, I guess you can beg me. I don't need to do that. I wanted to divorce him when I retired, so this works out perfectly. Then do it. I pulled out the divorce papers from my bag. They froze, staring at me with their mouths open. Please hurry, I'm leaving. Why did you prepare the divorce papers? Because I'd been thinking about it. I felt like now was the right time. I changed clothes for the last time. Hurry, let's go. Isn't it good that Jen is finally leaving? Tim signed the divorce papers at her urging. Okay, that's done. I checked the papers without hesitation. He didn't like my attitude. He was still swearing. You're just a middle school graduate. You know you're going to die soon, right? Oh, I don't know about that. Please, both of you. I raised my voice, clear enough for my kids to hear. Here, hold this so he doesn't tear it up. Okay, I've got it. You guys are disgusting. You're the worst father ever. You think graduating from that fancy university makes you special, but it doesn't do anything for your life. You're proud of a piece of paper while you've been unemployed your whole life. That's really dumb, don't you think? What? The truth is, my daughter beat him to the punch. You're such a dumb, unemployed old jerk. Okay, kids, that's too true. You're so honest. I've got proof of your affair. Get ready to pay for it. Well then. I left the house with my kids after they had no money. They should have paid me $1 million. Surprisingly, they managed to pay, but I think they borrowed money from a dangerous lender who gives loans to people with no job or guarantees. Then, I filed for divorce and became free. Now, I could finally focus on my studies. I worked part-time as a cleaner and studied hard. In the end, I was accepted into the law school I wanted. After 4 years, I graduated, passed the bar exam, and became the lawyer I always dreamed of being. My kids and their families threw me a little celebration. Life was wonderful. But of course, my ex-husband and Judy were still looking for me. How do I know? My ex-husband showed up at my new house. Please help me. I heard him crying outside. Your sister Judy doesn't work at all. We have no money. I went to see my kids. They won't see me. Of course not, you idiot. What are you saying? You think you'll be something great just because you went to college? You've got nothing. Don't be stupid. I just passed the bar exam. Well, whatever. If I fail, I'll be just like him. Now you're asking for money from the person you've always made fun of? That's hilarious. Why do you live in such a nice place? I do because of my job. You work? Yeah, I do. I used to be a janitor at a law firm. You're a cleaner? Yeah, I am. I clean my own desk. Your desk? What are you talking about? I kept the door chain on and opened the door. Here you go. I showed him my lawyer badge. He froze. You know, if you don't give up, you can keep living like this, but if you keep following me, we'll fight it out in court. I said that and slammed the door. After that, my ex-husband never came back. Judy did once, but I told her the same thing, and she never came back either. The two of them, who only have education, will keep falling apart without trying. I guess they'll continue on their path. If you don't give up, anything is possible. Jen is a hard worker, and she deserves our respect. I'm happy her kids are fully on her side. I hope Jen has a fulfilling life. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you liked it. See you in the next video.
I go by the name Alice, leading a seemingly ordinary life as a housewife. My husband John is an exceptionally kind partner, and our relationship has been free of any disagreements. It's not to boast, but he truly is the ideal companion. Currently residing in an apartment close to John's parents' house, this decision was intentional. With both my parents no longer with us, we wanted to be nearby in case of the birth of our child or any unforeseen issues. Additionally, considering the potential future care needs of John's parents, I saw the practicality of our living arrangement. However, a strange occurrence started to unfold during our dinner gatherings with John's parents. Mysterious stomach pains plagued me, leading me to initially avoid meals at John's house. Unfortunately, circumstances forced me to attend, and that's when an unexpected event transpired, revealing a shocking revelation about my mother-in-law's actions, shedding light on the source of my inexplicable pain. Before these unsettling events, John and I had opted out of a traditional wedding ceremony. I wasn't keen on being the center of attention, and we believed redirecting funds towards travel and hobbies made more sense than a lavish ceremony. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law, who conducted free cooking classes as a hobby, proposed a dinner party to celebrate our marriage. Excited to showcase her culinary skills, she warmly welcomed John, but exhibited a noticeable coldness toward me. Despite the confusion, the dinner party proceeded with a variety of exquisite dishes prepared by her, momentarily overshadowing the earlier sense of unwelcome. Expressing gratitude for the delightful meals, I thought the initial discomfort might have been a misunderstanding. However, that night, severe stomach pain struck suddenly, leading to a rushed visit to the emergency room. Despite inconclusive diagnosis due to the absence of a specialist, my condition stabilized after receiving IV treatment for 2 hours. The cause of my distress, possibly linked to expired bread consumed earlier, remained a mystery. After returning home with John, I found myself grappling with unexplained stomach pain every time I dined at my in-laws' place following a particular incident. Seeking advice, I discussed this issue over lunch with a long-lost friend. She suggested, could it be that simply visiting your husband's house is causing you stress? Surprisingly, she had experienced a similar situation, falling ill due to harassment from her mother-in-law. After relocating to a new apartment further away, her health improved significantly. Although I hadn't initially considered visits to my in-laws as a source of stress, my friend's advice made me ponder if there was an underlying unease in my heart. Concerned about my recurring illnesses, my husband, who had initially brushed off the matter, began to take it seriously. Consequently, he suggested that we temporarily halt our visits to my in-laws. While the exact cause remained elusive, my husband suspected his mother's cooking, given my consistent bouts of illness after meals there. According to him, his mother often expressed loneliness and a desire for shared meals, but he had declined due to his worry for my health. Despite our decision to refrain from visiting, a new challenge emerged. My brother-in-law was scheduled to visit our parents for his wedding greetings, and a family dinner was arranged. Reluctantly, my husband explained, "I can't decline this time, as my brother is going to our parents' place. We're expected to participate in the dinner meeting with the entire family." Despite my inclination to avoid a direct encounter with my mother-in-law, I couldn't neglect the familial obligation tied to my brother-in-law and his wife. Deciding to participate in the family dinner, little did anyone anticipate the ensuing commotion it would cause. Despite my husband's concern for my health, he advised me, "Alice, you don't have to eat the meals today." As we arrived at the dinner meeting, my mother-in-law greeted us with her usual warm smile, particularly directed at my husband. However, I couldn't help but sense an even colder attitude towards me compared to before. Upon entering the room, my brother-in-law and his wife were engaged in a pleasant conversation with my father-in-law. My mother-in-law's homemade dishes were beautifully presented on the table, emitting an enticing aroma that stirred my appetite. The mystery persisted. Why did I fall ill after consuming these seemingly delicious meals? No matter how I pondered, the reason eluded me. Seated at the table, my mother-in-law promptly urged me to start eating. Swiftly, my husband intervened, stating that I wasn't feeling well. However, she seemed to dismiss my condition as a minor issue, offering me a dish with a wordless smile, almost challenging me to eat. Feeling at a loss for words, my brother-in-law came to my defense, expressing gratitude for my presence despite my illness. He suggested it was sufficient to exchange greetings and encouraged me to go home and rest if needed. Informed in advance by my husband, he and his wife stood by my side. Ignoring their son's words, my mother-in-law insisted on packaging the dish in a Tupperware for me to try later. Wondering why she was so insistent on my eating, I nodded to avoid upsetting her. As she went to the kitchen to fetch the Tupperware, a loud clatter interrupted the scene. All eyes turned to my father-in-law, who was clutching his stomach in pain despite not having started his meal. In a panic, my mother-in-law asked what happened, and he, in agony, replied, "My stomach hurts so much I can't bear it." The cause of his suffering remained unclear, adding another layer of tension to the already tumultuous dinner. I had only taken a few nibbles from the kitchen before the gathering, and suddenly my father-in-law collapsed weakly. Disbelief struck me as my mother-in-law, panicked, exclaimed, "You must be joking. That was something I made to feed Alice." "Wait, this is not the time to think about that. Call an ambulance." Without hesitation, she dialed for an ambulance and rushed to the hospital with my father-in-law. We all stood frozen, staring, processing the unexpected turn of events. However, her earlier words lingered in my mind, the revelation that what my father-in-law had snacked on was intended for me. It implied there might be something wrong with that particular dish. Driven by concern, I headed to the kitchen, a place my mother-in-law had always kept me away from. There, I discovered something that left me in shock, finally understanding why I would fall ill and why my father-in-law had collapsed. The realization that she would do something like this struck me as utterly absurd. Reeling from the revelation, I knew I had to decide how to handle this betrayal. Forgiveness wasn't an option. Revenge became a necessity. Each of us drove to the hospital where my father-in-law was taken. After checking in at the reception, we headed straight for the patient room. Inside, we could hear two voices, one unmistakably my mother-in-law's and the other likely a male doctor. She was being questioned about what had happened. "I'm telling you, I don't know anything. He just suddenly collapsed while we were all enjoying the meals," my mother-in-law insisted. The doctor probed further, asking if he had consumed anything rotten or expired. Evading the questions, my mother-in-law continued to deny any knowledge. Summoning courage, I took a deep breath and knocked on the hospital room door. Flustered, my mother-in-law greeted us. "Oh, Alice and John, you're here too. Your father is okay. Please go home and enjoy dinner with the four of you." However, her somewhat flustered manner and attempt to close the door heightened my suspicions. I seized the moment and asserted, "No, I'd like to talk to you for a bit." Behind me, my husband silently projected his presence, while my brother-in-law and his wife sent sharp, cold glances. Faced with this collective insistence, my mother-in-law couldn't refuse and reluctantly said, "Okay. Allowing us into the room, my father-in-law's facial color appeared to be returning, showing signs of stability. However, the exact cause remained undetermined. Though he was still conscious when brought to the hospital, he had been frequently using the bathroom. The doctor explained that he eventually lost consciousness due to dehydration. Attempting to offer an excuse, my mother-in-law forced a smile, saying, "Well, your father is getting old, and he drinks beer every day." Her attempt at justification seemed feeble, and realizing that neither the doctor nor we were convinced, she fell silent, closing her mouth. I looked at my mother-in-law with a stern gaze, took evidence out of my bag, and presented it to her. As she observed the contents, her eyes widened, and she broke into a cold sweat, visibly confused. "Mother-in-law, isn't this a laxative? I found some powdered laxatives in the kitchen. What's this about?" I inquired calmly, but she remained silent. The doctor, examining the laxatives, seemed to understand. Oh, that would make sense if he had diarrhea without being food poisoned. Generally, intake of laxatives is a possibility, he explained. Subsequent detailed examinations revealed that my father-in-law had indeed ingested a significant amount of laxatives. The final diagnosis pointed to the laxatives making his intestines hyperactive, causing repeated abdominal pain, diarrhea, and ultimately dehydration. Cornered and unable to make excuses any longer, my mother-in-law hesitated before finally saying, "Wait. At first, I only expected Alice to get a little sick. But because Alice was fine, I gradually increased the amount of laxatives." The confession laid bare the motive for her actions, a sense of loss over her perceived detachment of her beloved eldest son from her. Starting with a small amount of laxatives out of spite, she admitted to progressively escalating the dosage, ultimately reaching a point where it caused a person to collapse. My surprise was impossible to conceal as I confronted my mother-in-law, stating, "What you've done is just crazy. You may not know this, but I've been to the hospital multiple times for IVs due to unexplained symptoms. Despite this, I can't understand why you would attempt to mix in such a huge amount of laxatives." Unable to find room for argument after having her mistake pointed out, my mother-in-law hung her head in frustration. A series of criticisms followed from her sons. "Mom, no matter the circumstances, this can't be forgiven. It just so happens that Alice didn't respond that sensitively to the laxatives. But what you've done is the same as a crime," my husband exclaimed. His words were echoed by my brother-in-law, who expressed, "I thought it was unthinkable, but were you trying to do the same thing to my wife? Thinking about it that way is really scary." He pulled his wife closer, throwing a stern gaze at his mother. The doctor intervened, emphasizing, "Medication should be used in the proper amounts and methods, as your son said. Luckily, your daughter-in-law's symptoms were mild, but your husband had no resistance to laxatives, thus resulting in this severe reaction." Unable to bear the criticism, my mother-in-law, despite her age, began to cry like a small child. From the bed, a voice was heard, my father-in-law, who had regained consciousness. He exclaimed, "How could you do such a terrible thing?" Crying, my mother-in-law grasped his hand, apologizing, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." However, he forcefully shook off her hand. Frozen in place, shocked by the unfolding events, my mother-in-law witnessed my father-in-law letting out a deep sigh. He continued, "Even if you didn't intend to hurt me, it's a fact that you've caused Alice to suffer a lot. That's not right. It's a shameful act as a human being." In response to his words, my mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, clinging to him. She turned to me, apologizing for her actions and pledging never to repeat such behavior. Seeking my forgiveness, she expressed hope that my husband and the boys would also be convinced. Witnessing this emotional scene, I found myself torn between the desire for retribution and the possibility of forgiveness. I cynically thought it must be a performance, and she wasn't genuinely remorseful about what she had done to me, so I smirked. "Ah, what are you talking about? I'm not even considering forgiving you now after all I've been through," I asserted. In solidarity, my husband stood beside me and added, "Mother, stay away from Alice. I can no longer think of someone who hurt my beloved wife as family." The declaration stunned my mother-in-law, causing her to collapse to her knees, rejected as family by her own son. Observing the scene, my brother-in-law nodded and stated firmly, "I can't imagine living with someone who could potentially harm my wife. I have no intention of you being my family anymore." His words echoed an unanimous sentiment against her. As my mother-in-law continued to beg for forgiveness, broken down in tears, no one uttered a word. Everyone simply looked down at her, realizing that her selfish jealousy had caused this situation. Desperate for support, she turned to my father-in-law, seemingly forgetting he had already rejected her. Sobbing, she implored, "What about you? You won't abandon me, your wife, will you?" However, my father-in-law retorted, "What of it? I can't stay with someone who commits such inhumane acts anymore. I want a divorce." Crushed by his words, my mother-in-law was left devastated. Agreeing with my husband's suggestion to let my father-in-law rest, we bid farewell to him and exited the hospital room. While waiting for my husband to retrieve the car at the entrance, my mother-in-law, panting, suddenly ran towards us. "Begging you, Alice, please forgive me," she pleaded. Looking at her tear-streaked and snotty face, I responded, "I have no reason to risk my life to be with you, mother-in-law. If I forgive you now, I don't think it will truly be for your benefit." I responded coldly to my mother-in-law, and just as I finished speaking, my husband arrived in the car. We got in, and through the window, I told my mother-in-law, "This is goodbye. We will likely never meet again. Take care." Her response to my cold words was silence. She watched us leave, her hand brushing against her sleeve, murmuring something as if in prayer while looking up at the sky. True to my father-in-law's declaration, he divorced and moved out. In the aftermath, my husband and brother-in-law severed ties with their mother. Previously, my father-in-law had been the leaseholder and paid the rent for the apartment. However, since he left after the divorce, I had to start paying the rent myself. My mother-in-law, having been a housewife all her life, struggled to figure out how to earn a living. Despite trying to make ends meet with the money she received from the property division in the divorce, it quickly ran out. Attempts to charge for her cooking classes and outreach for various work opportunities failed, with the news of the incident spreading and leaving her with no students. Consequently, she couldn't pay the rent, was evicted from her home, and only then did she grasp the harshness of reality. Now homeless, my mother-in-law began looking for work, facing the difficulties of life without a place to live. This, as people say, is karma. Shortly after being released from my unexplained illness, I found out that I was pregnant. My husband and father-in-law, despite the divorce, remained in contact. Upon hearing about my pregnancy, my father-in-law was overjoyed, even more so than we were. He had already prepared a stroller and car seat for us, a gesture that truly felt like a blessing. Discovering a playful side to my previously silent father-in-law, I am filled with joy as a family member. What's more, my brother-in-law and his wife had twins, unexpectedly expanding our family. Our lives became more lively, and I am genuinely looking forward to our new life with our new family members and the fresh days ahead.
Hey Mom, can you grab me a beer, please? Mom, are you deaf? Oh, so now you can hear me? I asked you to bring me a beer. This is how it always is when my son and his wife talk to me. We've been living together for 5 years, and they've never really listened to me. They usually ignore me or just boss me around like I'm their maid. My daughter-in-law, Jean, talks badly about me to everyone, and my son Paul treats me like I'm just here to clean up after them. I decide to ignore them and pretend to watch TV, acting like I can't hear them. I'm fed up with them only paying attention when they want something and ignoring me the rest of the time. After a while of ignoring them, Jean grabs the remote and turns off the show I was watching. I'm surprised when she says loudly, right next to my ear, "Hey, mother-in-law, can you hear me? Make sure you make Paul's lunch tomorrow, okay?" Her voice was so loud it made my ears ring, and I couldn't help but grimace. Seeing my reaction, my daughter-in-law laughed and left the living room with my son. I couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't be a bit more considerate, especially since I'm her husband's mother and she relies on me every day. But judging from my son's behavior, it seemed like I was just a maid to her. There was no apology from either of them, and I didn't feel like they cared about how I felt. Frustrated, I sent an email to my husband and decided to leave the house. My name is Karen, and I'll be turning 72 this year. 5 years ago, my son and his wife asked if they could move in with me because they were worried about the future and wanted to save money. Since then, we've been living together as 2 families in one house. If you live with us, Mom, you'll feel safer, right? Maybe you're right. My husband is a workaholic. He started his own company when he was young and still works hard even at 73. Our house felt quiet after our son moved out. When I talked to my husband about our son and his wife moving in with us, he just said, "Do whatever you like." So with not much discussion and feeling a bit bored, I agreed, hoping life would get livelier. When they moved in, my son's wife, Jean, and I split the housework. But as she said her part-time job got busier, I ended up doing more and more. She helps if I ask, but usually she's reluctant or busy with her own stuff. So I stopped asking for her help, and I do everything myself, feeling unappreciated. Even at meal times with the whole family, there's hardly any conversation. I guess I got used to it, like with my husband. One day, while I was making dinner for 3 as usual, I got a message from my husband saying, "I'll be late for work, don't need dinner." This wasn't unusual, but the problem was with my son and his wife. "Dad's gonna be late, huh?" "Yeah, I'm not hungry either." "Oh, I'm going out with a friend, so I don't need dinner." "Why are you telling me this?" "I've already made it," I said. "It's okay, just save it for tomorrow." Even though it was dinner time, they were about to leave without a word if I didn't say anything. They could have told me earlier if they didn't need dinner. It seemed like they'd never think to consider me first. I couldn't help but feel frustrated at their rudeness. But they left without any apology. What am I working so hard for? I sat in a quiet living room, looking at the dinner I'd already prepared, not going to waste. What am I even doing? Just thinking about it made me feel so tired. I wrapped up the still warm dinner and put it in the fridge before heading to bed. The next morning, when I came downstairs, my husband, who had woken up earlier, apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." Our conversation was short, as usual. It could have ended there, but when my husband noticed my expression, he furrowed his brows slightly and asked, "Did Paul and his wife have dinner?" "No, they said they didn't eat and went out," I replied. "I see," my husband said, noticing the dinner for 3 in the fridge. I was glad to finally have a conversation after so long, so I told him what happened last night. My usually quiet husband listened carefully. After hearing me out, he gently said, "You don't have to do everything." He acknowledged that our son's behavior was becoming worse every day, but that doesn't mean you should overwork yourself. His words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I realized I had been pushing myself too hard and felt relieved that my husband understood. My son and his wife were grown-ups now, so I didn't need to do everything for them. With that realization, the situation seemed a bit brighter. I might be late from work again, so you don't need to prepare dinner for me tonight, my husband said. "Oh, okay," I replied with a smile. With his words in mind, I decided it was time for my son and his wife to understand this too. Even though it was Sunday, I said goodbye to my husband and made up my mind to stand up to my son and his wife. Once my husband left, my son and his wife finally woke up in the afternoon, still in their pajamas. They came into the living room and immediately asked, "What's for lunch?" "Why don't you have what's left from yesterday? But you could at least warm it up for us or set it on the table. You're not small children. You can do it yourself," I replied. "Well, mother-in-law, you are getting old, aren't you?" Jean, my daughter-in-law, joked with a laugh, and Paul, my son, joined in, looking at me. "I'm exhausted because Jean hasn't been helping with the housework at all," I said. "Oh, can't you manage without me? Is it your menopause or something?" Jean retorted, laughing. Their attitudes made me sigh. They went back to their room without cleaning up after eating, seeming unbothered. As expected, my husband didn't return until late that night. Since I didn't need to cook for him, I bought myself a ready-made meal from the supermarket. "Oh, Mom, what are you eating? Ready-made food? What about dinner?" Paul asked. "I don't know, mother-in-law. What are you thinking? Have you forgotten about your family?" Jean added. I wondered if Jean was incapable of having a conversation without throwing in some bark. I decided to ignore my daughter-in-law, which seemed to quiet Paul down. However, he quickly picked up his phone and started complaining again. "You don't work, Mom. You should at least take care of the house." I thought that since it was their day off, they could prepare their own meals for once. But instead, they decided to order delivery. "Give us the money later," Paul said, which made me lose my patience, especially since they were always talking about saving money. I agreed not to ask them for money to cover our living expenses, and I never bothered them about it. But I never expected them to take advantage of me like this. I decided to completely ignore them, refusing to do anything for my son and daughter-in-law, who showed such disrespect. "Hey Mom, beer," Paul demanded, while Jean kept making snide remarks. Paul talked to me like I was their housemaid. Ignoring them, I turned my back and pretended to watch TV, acting like I couldn't hear them. After a while of ignoring them, it seemed like she gave up and stopped talking to me. But this peace didn't last long. Before I knew it, my daughter-in-law snuck up behind me, grabbed the TV remote, and turned off the TV. Startled, I looked up only for her to shout into my ear, "Hey, mother-in-law, can you hear me? Make sure to prepare lunch for Paul tomorrow, okay?" Her voice was so loud it hurt my ears, making me flinch. Laughing at my reaction, my daughter-in-law left the living room with Paul. I couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't show a bit of courtesy, especially considering that I'm her husband's mother and she relies on me regularly. But judging from Paul's attitude, it seemed like I was nothing more than a maid to her. As it turned out, there was no sign of consideration for me at all, and I didn't even hear an apology for last night's dinner from either of them. Letting out a deep sigh, I sent a text to my husband and made up my mind to leave the house. Early the next morning, I packed my things and left before they woke up. When I arrived at a nearby business hotel, my phone buzzed with texts from Paul, who had just woken up before heading to work. Apparently, they were in quite a chaos this morning. Texts and calls from both of them flooded my phone. When I checked the messages, all I saw were complaints, like "What are you doing? I told you I need lunch." Jean also sent a mocking text. "Are you wandering around forgetting your responsibilities?" It seemed they were struggling just because I hadn't prepared breakfast for them, which made me chuckle a bit. Seeing a call from Paul during his lunch break, I decided it was time to talk to him. "You finally picked up, Mom. Where the hell are you, and what are you doing?" Paul's voice sounded impatient. "It's none of your business, is it? You didn't even prepare our food. Where are you, Paul? You're not a child. You can make your own food, can't you?" I responded, feeling irritated. If he had struggled so much to prepare just one meal, he should have shown some appreciation. But to my surprise, he said something unexpected. "I'm paying for living expenses, so I need you to do the housework." "Living expenses? What are you talking about? I never received such a thing," I said, puzzled. "Why not? Jean should have been giving it to you every month, so don't lie," Paul insisted, claiming he was paying me living expenses. Despite my truthful denial, Paul started calling me a liar. The truth is, my husband covers all their living expenses, including their food. Even after explaining this repeatedly, Paul refused to believe me. I could hear Jean in the background saying, "You're probably just playing dumb and spending it for yourself." Unable to continue the conversation, I ended it and said, "I don't know what I don't know, and I don't plan to come home for a while." "Why not? What are we supposed to do for food?" Paul's voice sounded desperate. "Figure it out yourselves." By now, I hung up the phone and let out another big sigh. Why do they believe they're not in the wrong, even after all this? I didn't understand what Paul was talking about earlier when he mentioned our living expenses. About a week after I left the house, the situation improved. My husband, who had come to check on me, apparently talked to Paul and Jean, and their texts suddenly became more respectful and submissive. Wondering what had happened, I received a text from my husband. "Paul and Jean want to apologize. If you feel like it, please come home." Thanks to my husband's talk, they finally seemed to understand. I replied to my husband's text, made preparations, and decided to go home that day. When I returned home, Paul and Jean were waiting at the entrance, their faces pale and worn out. It seemed they were quite upset by the lecture from my husband. I decided to hear the story about this past week from them and my husband about the living expenses. I mentioned on the phone I said I didn't receive them, right? I asked. You said you wanted to save money, so I didn't say anything. Actually, Dad was really mad at us about that, Paul explained. It seemed my son had misled his father about his contribution to the household expenses, believing I had been lying and portraying me as the villain. However, when my husband explained the reality of my busy schedule and showed him our household book, Paul quieted down. You couldn't even believe me, but Jean kept saying that she was giving you the money. So what happened to your living expenses? I asked, feeling betrayed. From my son's perspective, he was definitely paying, so he must have been baffled that the money wasn't reaching me. It seemed my husband and son confronted Jean and made her confess. At first, Jean pretended ignorance, but when my husband confronted her, she finally confessed everything. I'm appalled. She was accusing me of squandering money on the phone, but it turns out she was just talking about herself, I said, feeling betrayed. But living with my in-laws can be stifling, and everyone was inviting me, so I just because of that, you thought it was okay to embezzle our living expenses. You made me look like a fool too, Paul interjected, his voice full of frustration. What? You're acting all high and mighty too, Jean retorted defensively. At the point when the two of them began to stray from the topic and argue, my husband cleared his throat loudly. Startled by his sudden interruption, Paul and Jean fell silent immediately, seemingly terrified of my husband's disapproval. I couldn't help but chuckle at their reaction, like children caught misbehaving. Excuses, excuses. Cut the crap. First, you should sincerely apologize to your mom, my husband said firmly. I'm sorry. The two of them finally bowed their heads to me. But Paul still tried to justify himself, saying he had been taking it easy because it was his home. I've been busy at work, and I just wanted to relax at home, he added. So what about your mother, who was being taken for granted and mocked by her big son and his wife, even at her own home? My husband's words cut through my son's excuses, leaving him speechless. I'm appalled at my son, who, despite his age, still relies on his parents, and at Jean, who took advantage of that to embezzle money. My husband continued, his tone firm. Mom, I'm sorry. You see, I'm apologizing to you, Paul said, trying to make amends. Do you think an apology makes everything okay? Please reflect on yourself a bit, I responded firmly. The two of them thought that bowing their heads to me would resolve everything smoothly, and they were flustered by my words and tried to make excuses. But I could see through their scheme, and I shook my head. Whether you contribute to the living expenses or not, I can't overlook that attitude. You have to learn to be more grateful, I said firmly. But aren't you worried about your future too, mother-in-law? Paul interjected. Yes, I'm full of worries about relying on people like you. How can you talk to us like that? I retorted. You splurge our living expense out of stress from living with us, Jean added defensively. I can't have someone like you stay with us any longer, I stated firmly, silencing them with my resolve. They needed to learn once again how rude their actions were while living together as a couple. Later, we managed to have them move out. In the days that followed, Jean, my son's wife, started to come to our house occasionally to learn household chores from me. She continually vented about how my son Paul did not lift a finger to help with any housework. As she had always been showing off to her colleagues, I assumed she couldn't complain to anyone else. Now I understand just how much I relied on you, Karen, she admitted. Indeed, and yet you had the audacity to accuse me of being deaf and squandering money, I remarked, feeling vindicated. Unable to live with us anymore and facing financial constraints due to her misuse of funds, Jean fervently complained about her now austere life. However, as I listened, I couldn't help but feel that she was simply facing the consequences of her actions. As for Paul, he started to bring home delicious snacks as gifts from time to time, seemingly trying to make up for his previous lack of consideration. Although he still mentioned his past behavior occasionally, I appreciated his efforts. I knew he wasn't the most expressive or communicative person, but his gestures were touching nonetheless. During our discussions with Paul and Jean, my husband expressed his gratitude, saying, "Thanks for your hard work, honey. I appreciate it." I'm glad that I can talk to my husband like this again. I reflected, feeling grateful for the calmness that had returned to our lives. Despite the challenges we faced, I found myself leading a life that was calmer and happier than before.
After the somber funeral for my father, a prominent shareholder, my brother-in-law caught us off guard by raising the delicate topic of inheritance. The focus shifted to stocks and a substantial $5 million bequest, confidently asserting that my wife, the eldest daughter, and my sister was set to inherit this windfall. The revelation initially filled her with joy at the prospect of a significant inheritance. However, their excitement was short-lived when the family lawyer delivered the disheartening news that my brother-in-law had no legitimate claim to the inheritance. I, Greg Johnson, a 42-year-old office worker, reflected on my father's vibrant life, despite his age of 78. He remained full of vitality, actively engaged in his work. My older sister, a perpetual source of trouble, led a carefree life, causing continuous worry for our parents. In her middle age, she introduced Aaron Corner, a man she intended to marry. Despite his youth and handsomeness, I couldn't warm up to him due to his demeanor. My sister demanded that our father finance her wedding, swiftly depleting the funds and unapologetically seeking more. A year after her marriage, tragedy struck. Our father collapsed while playing golf and passed away a few days later. Overwhelmed by grief, I found myself struggling with the funeral preparations, with no assistance from my sister. After the funeral, a lawyer visited our home to discuss the inheritance outlined in my father's will. While my mother and I were already aware of its contents, my sister and brother-in-law were oblivious until then. They shockingly claimed that the stocks and the $5 million inheritance should go to my wife. Stunned and speechless, my mother and I were taken aback. The lawyer corrected them, revealing that my brother-in-law had no right to inherit. Surprised and disappointed, my sister and her husband expressed disbelief and shock. The lawyer dropped another bombshell. My sister and I did not share the same father. This revelation left my sister furious, demanding an explanation from our mother, who wore an indescribable expression. The long-held family secret had finally come to light, leaving my sister shaken and seeking answers. "I'm sorry," our mother managed to say amidst the shaking emotions. "You are the child of my previous husband. Since childhood, my sister had teased me, claiming that Dad loved her more. Now faced with the truth, she seemed unable to accept it. However, she quickly shifted her stance, suggesting that if she was adopted, she would still have inheritance rights. Aaron chimed in, agreeing with her, yet our mother firmly denied any adoption, causing disbelief. "I'm the eldest daughter, and even Dad said so," my sister angrily declared, glaring at me in response. I felt my anger intensifying as I countered my sister's insatiable desire for more, despite the considerable amount of money our dad had already given her. My brother-in-law chimed in, supporting her claim and stating that it's natural to spend money on one's daughter. However, the lawyer intervened, drawing attention to the questionable spending, including debt repayment, and suggested reviewing the will. My sister panicked, claiming ignorance about any will. It turned out that our father had wanted to discuss and decide the contents with the family, but she had skipped it for frivolous reasons. When the lawyer proposed reviewing the will, my sister and her husband reluctantly agreed. The will clearly stated the transfer of property to my mother and me, explaining why my sister was not adopted. Her mistreatment of me and reckless spending had disappointed our father, realizing she had no right to the inheritance. My sister was visibly shocked, and her brother-in-law, who had initially supported her, suddenly changed his tune, accusing her of lying and abruptly leaving the room. In her anger, my sister blamed our mother for not asking to have her adopted, claiming it was unfair that only Mom received the inheritance. Frustrated, she cried and screamed, expressing her disappointment. Despite my sister's outrageous behavior, the lawyer remained calm, explaining that as the biological son, I had the right to receive it all. Before things escalated further, he warned that the police might need to be involved if the situation continued. My sister appeared startled by the mention of the police, given her history of repeated theft. As my mother spoke tearfully to her, she clicked her tongue and left the room. Half a year passed, and the inheritance proceedings were completed without issue. Despite some grumbling from my sister and brother-in-law, they couldn't stand against the lawyer's efficiency. My mother gave my sister a small amount of money, but I had no intention of interfering. The frustrating part for our family was that the two had disappeared. Their blatant greed was so evident that even our relatives were lost for words. One day, my wife suggested that my mother, daughter, and I go out to eat. Since my father's passing, our mother had been down, but she showed smiles when with her granddaughter. I suggested to my mother, "Why don't you live with us?" But you know, Rook still comes home occasionally. Sis only comes around to beg for money, doesn't she? How long does she plan to keep this up? The reason my mom defends my sister is that she is her blood-related child, and there might be concern that if we visit our family home, my sister might cause trouble again. Understanding that, I told her to take her time thinking about it and then drove my mom to our family home. Upon arrival, we encountered something unexpected. The lights were on in our supposedly empty home. It wasn't the time for the helper to come, so we were puzzled. I parked the car, suggesting, "Let's go up and have some coffee with Mother." We got out of the car and headed to the entrance, but the moment we approached the door, a car came rushing in. "Mom, watch out." Hearing my daughter ahead of me, I shielded my wife with my body. The car just grazed me, and I managed to dodge it, but I collided with a nearby flower bed, injuring myself badly. The car stopped after hitting the garage door. "Are you okay, Dad?" My wife and daughter rushed over, supporting me. Mother was trembling in shock at the sudden event. Understandably, from that moment on, a day of turmoil began. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance and had to be hospitalized briefly. Later, I heard that Aaron Warner, my brother-in-law, was driving the car. According to the police, he explained that he mistook the accelerator for the brake. However, I had my doubts about that story. Amidst all of this, my sister and mother visited me in the hospital. Mother left briefly to arrange flowers, and during that time, my sister coldly looked at me and said, "You're only tough and bodied, huh?" With a slightly disappointed tone, I couldn't help but give her a smile. If I had died in the accident, Mom would inherit everything, right? "Messed up your plan," I said a bit sarcastically, and my sister looked uneasy. "You planned this, didn't you?" When I asked, my sister looked away, and I added, "But I won't be accepting Mom's share, so it won't work out for you." My sister looked surprised at this. She probably thought I would naturally accept it. I have a wife and kids, so I passed the inheritance to them. It's not strange for the head of the family to think that way. Even so, I've made a will early, like Dad did. My sister was taken aback at this. "What? So that means—" "Yeah, unfortunately, my share of the inheritance won't go to Mom." My sister stared at me, then began to shake with anger. "There's $5 million, right? You could at least share a bit." When I immediately refused, my sister furiously grabbed my collar. "I'm your sister. We should split it." Whether it was the amount of the inheritance that drove her mad, she continued to scream in a very aggressive voice. I felt pity for my sister. It's that greedy attitude that disappointed Dad. Don't you get it? My sister's face turned even redder, and she grabbed my neck. "Bro, stop it." Mother, who had just returned, scolded her loudly. Then the nurses, called by the nurses' call button, arrived and escorted my sister out of the room. Mother seemed to want to protect my sister, but my sister had lashed out at her too. As she left, she asked, "Why did she turn out like this?" Hearing Mother say this sadly, I felt a pain in my heart. Later, Mother's health deteriorated, and she fell off, gradually weakening. My wife and I started visiting the family home more frequently to support her, but this seemed to upset my sister. Probably she encountered my wife when coming to ask for money or heard about it from mother. One day, my sister called my cell phone. "From now on, we will take care of mom. You guys don't need to come. Watch this." All of a sudden, however, my sister wasn't listening and said, "We've already decided," before hanging up. My wife told me she had been turned away by my sister. Too concerned about how my sister, who had no experience in household chores or living, would manage, I quickly contacted mother. To my surprise, I found out that my brother-in-law had experience in caregiving. Mother was still independent, not yet in a worrying state. This reassured me. However, within just a month, mother was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. It was said to be due to a medication dosage error. When we rushed to the hospital, mother was shockingly weak. The doctors also seemed puzzled by her condition. I couldn't recall such a mistake ever happening before. Leaving my wife to care for mother, I went to our family home, which was in a terrible state. Despite my mother's love for cooking, the usually well-stocked fridge was shockingly empty. Even the helper had been swiftly dismissed. Feeling ashamed of trusting my sister even a little, anger surged within me. Checking the safe where valuables were kept, I discovered a large amount of money missing from mother's passbook. The passbook with the inheritance was secure in a bank locker, but there was hardly any money left for living expenses. Returning to my mother, I explained the situation and revealed my sister's betrayal. Brooke did such a thing. Mother seemed unaware of the passbook issue and showed a shocked expression. When asked about the medication error, she explained that my brother-in-law had prepared it and looked troubled. "Mom, I don't think you should let them into that house. They claimed they would take care of you, but the state of that house was the worst. And you've gotten so frail. Haven't they been feeding you properly?" Speaking with concern, I hung her head. "Mom, let's live together. I'll build a new house, and we can live there together." Moved by my suggestion, mother shed tears. However, her condition continued to worsen. Despite the doctor's best efforts, they, along with my sister, seemed to weigh heavily on her. Ultimately, mother passed away without recovering. When I went to the family home for the funeral, all the valuable items had disappeared. It seemed that my sister and brother-in-law, in need of money, had taken them. Standing in the desolate place, I was overcome with anger. I had to find a way to make my sister take responsibility for mother's sake and as atonement for what she had done. I resolved to do something. The day after mother's funeral, my sister and I met at the lawyer's office to discuss the inheritance. Condolences, but as her daughter, I'm entitled to mother's inheritance. My sister said with a sense of superiority that made me laugh involuntarily. She seemed to be under some misconception. "Let's open the will then." As the lawyer revealed the contents of the will, my sister turned pale. "You're joking. Why, bro? You are not entitled to any of the inheritance. This is in accordance with Dad's wishes." My brother-in-law started to get angry, but the lawyer had nothing else to say except repeat the same thing. "This must be a mistake. Bro is her child, isn't she?" My brother-in-law suddenly became furious, throwing things off the table. "Are you trying to trick us? We won't let you get away with this. Give us the inheritance now." "Aaron, you planned to kill mother, didn't you?" When I asked, my brother-in-law glared at me unpleasantly. "Oh, I wouldn't do such a thing." "Then why did the medication error occur?" My brother-in-law appeared annoyed. "I don't know anything about that. It's impossible that I can't inherit. You must have done something." My sister was getting more agitated. "Now I'm even behind on my condo payments." I was shocked. She hadn't rushed to mother's side after hearing of her death because she was busy with such matters, hoping for the inheritance. "Really, there's nothing left." My sister pressed the lawyer. "That seems to be the case. Let me explain in detail." The lawyer explained the details of the inheritance. Ultimately, after deducting what my sister had withdrawn and sold, there was hardly anything left for her to inherit. My sister held her head in dismay. I had discussed this in advance with the lawyer. I found satisfaction with the outcome. "Stop joking. There can't be so little." My mother and I hadn't told my sister. but most of Mother's property had already been distributed to my children, her grandchildren. Therefore, there was already little left to inherit. However, my sister kept murmuring her dissatisfaction. I felt nothing but resentment towards my sister, who had lived off the money given by father and now mother, thinking she could rest easy knowing I would take care of her. But you just took her money. You are a true disgrace to our parents. I raised my voice in frustration. Caring for someone costs money, you know. Don't you understand? Then show me the receipts for what you spent on Mom's care. I'll cover any necessary expenses. As I extended my hand, my sister turned pale and was at a loss for words. I threw those away. That's not good. Without receipts, it can't be proven as evidence. Hearing the lawyer's words, my sister struggled to find a response. During this, my brother-in-law tried to calm me down. Greg, your sister is in a tough spot. Maybe you could help her out a bit as family. I cannot. My immediate response left my brother-in-law speechless. I've been hurt by my sister for a long time. Frankly, I feel like it's karma, but you're the only siblings, maybe just a little. He tried to say more, but I refused. I was filled with anger, and so was my brother-in-law, apparently. Dan, if that accident had worked out, Rook would have had the entire inheritance. What accident? Before I could ask, my brother-in-law started talking on his own. Because of this brother, things didn't go as planned. I was supposed to get a new car, but now there's barely enough money left even for repairs. My sister tried to stop him, but it was too late. That's a pretty serious statement. You could be accused of fraud. The lawyer held a recorder, smirking at my sister and brother-in-law. What the heck? Isn't that against the rules to do that? You agreed to our conversation being recorded at the beginning, didn't you? Called out by his own words, my brother-in-law's face turned pale. To him, I had one thing to say. Aaron, I will be pressing charges about that accident. Don't joke. Where's the evidence? The evidence has just been provided by you. My sister, crying, began to hit my brother-in-law. You idiot! It's all your fault. Why did you say that? Later, my brother-in-law faced legal consequences for his actions. Additionally, unresolved suspicions about his past emerged, requiring police involvement. For some time, my sister, as an accomplice, was said to face lesser charges. However, struggling with her condo payments, she was turned away by relatives when she asked for money. In contrast, I chose to work earnestly and not rely on inheritance. Now, receiving stock dividends has become a small pleasure in my life. In the aftermath of the legal proceedings, the rift between my sister and me widened. The family bonds that were already strained became nearly non-existent. Despite her attempts to seek support from relatives, my sister faced a cold shoulder and her financial struggles continued. Meanwhile, I focused on building a stable and fulfilling life for my own family, working diligently. I found solace in providing for my wife and children without relying on the tumultuous inheritance battles that had plagued us. The stock dividends became not just a financial benefit, but a symbol of my commitment to a more secure and principled life. Over time, my sister's situation didn't improve. The consequences of her actions weighed heavily on her, both financially and emotionally. It became a stark reminder of the importance of responsible choices and the lasting impact they can have on one's life. As the years passed, I held no ill will towards my sister, recognizing that everyone faces their own battles and makes their own choices. Still, the events that unfolded served as a powerful lesson about the significance of integrity, responsibility, and the enduring consequences of one's actions. In the midst of the turmoil, I found strength in forging ahead with resilience, determined to create a future that wasn't tainted by past misfortunes. The dividends, once a mere financial gain, evolved into a testament to the enduring power of personal growth and the ability to rise above adversity. Life moved forward, and I embraced the opportunities to thrive, leaving behind the shadows of familial discord. The lessons learned from this chapter of my life became an integral part of shaping my values and decisions, ensuring a legacy built on principles rather than the pursuit of material gain. In the end, it was not the inheritance that defined my journey, but the choices made along the way. Choices that led to a life grounded in authenticity, resilience, and a commitment to building a better future for those I cared about the most.
My sister and parents told me firmly, "You can't stay here anymore. Please leave the place where you work from home. You're just depending on us." They didn't want me and my dog around anymore. I felt like they were finished talking about it. I answered, "If that's how you feel, then I'll do what I want," already thinking about my next moves. Let me tell you about myself. I'm Le, a 41-year-old woman who works as a freelance web designer. I can work from anywhere because of the internet and my home office setup. I like having my own space and being able to choose my own schedule, but things changed 5 years ago when my parents showed up at my house without warning. When they arrived, they started looking around and hinted at big changes. "Your house is big, Lisa," my mom said, glancing around. "It seems like we could live here too, especially with that spare room," my dad added. They seemed to think they could move in with me without even asking. But I never wanted to live with them, and I told them so. "Wait a minute. I don't want to live with you," I said, surprised by their suggestion. "What are you even talking about?" My dad got really mad and snapped back at me. "You've basically taken control of this house, claiming it was from your Uncle Michael, and now you're acting like it's yours. You're sinking pretty low." I tried to explain the truth, saying, "I didn't just take it. I talked to Uncle Michael, and he agreed to give it to me." But my parents were already set on moving in. They said, "Our old house is falling apart, and we can't stay there anymore." Since my mom didn't work and my dad's job didn't pay enough for big repairs, they felt like they had no choice but to move into the house Uncle Michael left me. I felt stuck because I didn't want to leave my parents with nowhere to go, so I reluctantly let them move in. But once they were settled, they started making snarky comments. They teased me saying, "Hey, Lisa, you're in your 40s now. When are you going to settle down?" They always brought up my single status. I'd tell them I love my job and I'm happy with my life. But they and others kept worrying about my love life, thinking I should do what my sister did and get married. But my sister's married life wasn't all smooth sailing either. Still, I wasn't bothered by their comments. I kept telling them that I'm happy with how things are. But one time, my mom overheard our conversation and jumped in. "Don't talk about your sister like that. She's married and has a stable job," she interrupted. I defended myself, saying, "I might not be married, but I have a good job too." But my mom didn't buy it. She kept criticizing me, saying, "You're always on your computer. Are you even making money legally?" I stood my ground, saying, "I earn my money honestly through my work. You don't need to worry." My mom didn't like my answer and scolded me, saying, "How dare you talk back to me? You're nothing like your sister." Being compared to my sister by our parents was something I was used to. She worked in an office temporarily while I chose to work from home. Even though I knew our parents might not understand working remotely, it still hurt to be put down all the time. One day, while I was cooking dinner, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I was surprised to find my sister Carol there, carrying a lot of luggage. "Hey Carol, what's up?" "It's been a while," I said, surprised by her sudden visit. "I know it's sudden, but I'll be staying here from now on," Carol said urgently. I was confused and said, "Staying here? I didn't hear anything about this." Carol explained, "Didn't Mom and Dad tell you? I got divorced, so I'll be staying with you now." Even though I was shocked at first, I tried to be welcoming and didn't show my surprise. Carol went upstairs and claimed an empty room as hers. My parents supported her, and I couldn't say anything against it. After that, my stress levels went up. Carol, since her divorce, had quit her job and spent her time gossiping about me with our mom. "Mom, do you like this dress?" Carol would ask, showing off something she bought. "Oh, it's lovely, Carol. You look so pretty," Mom would say. Then Carol would turn to me and say, "What do you think? It's not something Lisa would wear, right?" They kept watching me closely and saying mean things, but I chose not to let it bother me. Even though I wanted to snap back at them, I didn't. I realized that if I reacted to their mean words, it would only make things worse. So I stayed strong and didn't let their teasing get to me. One day, I decided to focus on my own happiness no matter what others said. Then something amazing happened. My close friend got 4 cute puppies. This changed everything for me. When I saw those adorable pups, I instantly fell in love. I thought carefully and decided to adopt a tiny black Chihuahua from the litter. I named him Charlie. Charlie was full of energy and mischief, with big, shiny eyes and a tail that wagged like crazy whenever he saw me. I had always wanted a Chihuahua, and having Charlie with me brought so much joy, especially since I often worked from home. His company made my days much brighter. "I'm calling you Charlie from now on, okay?" "Woof," I told him, sealing our bond. I was so excited about bringing Charlie home that I didn't talk to my family about it. But it was my house, and I was the one taking care of Charlie, so I didn't think they would mind. When I introduced Charlie to my family, my parents and sister Carol weren't happy. They hadn't known I was planning to get a dog, and they didn't like the idea of potential dog smells in the house. They made it clear they weren't pleased. "We had no idea you were getting a dog," they said. "Don't dogs smell?" "I hate bad smells," someone added. "Lisa, how could you bring a dog home without talking to us first?" they scolded me. Despite their complaints, I stood my ground. It's my house, and I felt Charlie and I needed each other. Having him here makes me happy, and that's what matters, I said firmly. I hoped they'd soon see Charlie the way I did. I explained that Charlie wasn't just any dog, he was a gift from a friend. Plus, I was the one paying for everything Charlie needed, so they didn't really have a reason to complain. What I choose to have in my house is my choice. I added firmly, if you're not happy, you're welcome to leave. At first, they were clearly annoyed and upset, but within a few hours, something amazing happened. Charlie's cuteness won them over completely. They couldn't stop playing with him, saying things like, "Aren't you adorable? Are you moms, dads, or sissies? Look over here, sweetie." It was like their frustration had vanished. My whole family fell in love with Charlie, and his presence changed their attitudes completely. From then on, our house was filled with love for Charlie. Because of him, the tension between me and my family eased, and we had peaceful days together. But as life goes, something happened that disturbed our peace. While I was out running an errand, my sister Carol called me urgently. She sounded upset and said, "Come home now." Surprised by her urgency, I asked her what was wrong. She angrily explained over the phone. "It's not what happened, it's what Charlie did. He peed on my clothes. What if they smell?" I tried to reassure her, saying just wash them quickly and they'll be fine. Plus, isn't it your fault for leaving your clothes on the floor? Carol shot back, "What? It's my fault. It's your lack of training that's the problem." I sighed, realizing it was a small issue. "Calm down, Carol. Charlie is still a puppy. If you take him for a walk, he won't go in the house." "Weren't you planning to walk him today? Did you actually do it?" I had planned to take Charlie for a walk later that day, but I didn't realize it would cause such chaos in my family. The problem was that I hadn't properly trained Charlie, our beloved dog, and now we were facing the consequences. When I got home, I could feel the tension in the air. My sister Carol was clearly angry and immediately confronted me. She had already told our parents about what happened, and they were also looking at me with disapproval as Carol's clothes lay on the floor, stained. Carol, upset, threw the dirty clothes at me. "You're paying for the cleaning," she said angrily. "Why should I pay?" I argued. "You didn't take him for a walk and left your clothes all over the floor." My parents quickly joined in, urging me to take responsibility. "Lisa, shouldn't you apologize to Carol?" they suggested. "This mess happened because of Charlie." As they continued blaming me, I couldn't help but defend Charlie. "Can't we cut Charlie some slack? Puppies make mistakes just like babies," I argued. But my family was set on blaming both me and Charlie. "This is all because of that dumb dog," my sister snapped again. "Lisa, you're lucky you didn't get married. You probably couldn't even raise a kid properly." Her words stung, and I grew frustrated. "How can you say that?" I protested. "If you had taken him for walks and kept the house clean, none of this would have happened." My sister had had enough. She pointed at me and said, "I'm done with this." Things had gone from a simple pet accident to personal attacks, showing there were bigger issues within our family. Despite the tension, I knew it was important to stay calm and talk things through. focusing on training Charlie and improving communication within our family. Her words hit me hard. What? I said, shocked. Did you really just say that? I'm standing my ground, my sister said firmly. We don't need someone like you here, wrecking our home, she continued, her words cutting deep, especially since she knew I didn't have a job at the moment. I was stunned. Didn't they realize I was the one paying the bills? As I stood there, shocked by my sister's hurtful words, even my parents sided with her. You should leave, Lisa. Your presence only makes things worse, they said, echoing her sentiments. I couldn't take it anymore. You're all bringing bad luck. Just go, we all shouted together, the tension thick in the air. That's it. I've had enough, I finally said. If this is how it's going to be, fine. With that, I took charge. I quickly packed my things and left the house with Charlie wrapped in a towel. Revenge crossed my mind, but I knew this wasn't the end. A few days later, as I expected, my sister called me in a panic. Lisa, help. What's going on with the house? She asked, sounding anxious. Intrigued by this new development in our family drama, I asked, what happened? Why do we have to leave all of a sudden? We've been told to leave by the end of this month, she said, sounding stressed. It hit me hard, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was a lesson for my family about being more compassionate and understanding. Why do we have to leave all of a sudden? Carol asked, her voice shaking with confusion. I've decided to sell the house, I told her firmly. Carol froze, clearly shocked. You can't do that. It's not your decision, she said, trying to process what I'd just said. The house officially became mine a month ago. I revealed, a fact I hadn't shared until now. Uncle Michael gave it to me, and the title is in my name. You're joking, right? Carol's disbelief was clear. Even if Uncle Michael transferred the title to you, you can't just sell the house like that. I get your concern, I said, trying to reassure her. But after you told me to leave, I talked to Uncle Michael. He confirmed that the house is mine now, Carol. He told me to do what I think is best and suggested I distance myself from the family as soon as possible. Carol was shocked, struggling to process this news. Seriously, she muttered. As we talked, I suspected my parents might be listening in on the conversation. Sure enough, they soon chimed in. Come on, Lisa, think about what you're doing. We have nowhere else to go, they said, trying to appeal to my sense of family loyalty. You can't do this to your own family. If you're a good daughter, you'll respect your parents, they added, their tone quiet but firm. Respect? What are you even talking about? You've always favored Carol over me. And who do you think has been supporting you for the past few years? You had nowhere else to go, so I reluctantly let you stay with me. I fired back, my frustration boiling over. My parents were stunned into silence by my strong response. Without waiting for them to say anything, I thought about what my decision meant, ready to set the boundaries that were long overdue. Who treated me and Charlie like unwanted guests and kicked us out. You did, didn't you? Trying to kick out the original resident is shameless. My father's voice filled with desperation, he said, Please, Lisa, help us. We're sorry. But I had had enough. I don't care. Figure it out yourselves, I said firmly. With that, I ended the call abruptly and blocked all contact with my family. Charlie, my loyal friend, looked up at me with concern. I hugged him tightly and whispered, I'm sorry, Charlie, for shouting. Everything will be okay now. I'll protect you. I felt relieved that I had saved Charlie from a family that mistreated him. In the days that followed, I heard that my parents and sister had to leave the house at the last minute, despite trying desperately to hold on to it. With my father's low income and my unemployed mother and sister, they couldn't keep up a decent life. There were rumors that my parents pressured my sister to find a job, and their relationships worsened every day. I wasn't interested in their situation, but it was clear their lives had gotten worse since I left. It felt like they were facing the consequences of their actions, and I couldn't help but feel a bit vindicated. Meanwhile, I was living happily in my new apartment where pets were welcome. I could work as I pleased without complaints, and all my earnings were for me and Charlie. I was genuinely happy with my life. Charlie, let's go to the dog park today, I said with a smile. Charlie seemed happier too, maybe because that noisy family wasn't part of our lives anymore. From then on, I was determined to protect Charlie and live a peaceful and happy life together.
Since my parents are moving in with us, his unexpected requests caught me off guard in the house we've shared. I was taken aback to be told such a thing. I hesitated but managed to request some time to pack. "Can you wait until tomorrow?" I asked. That was my response after some thought. Coldly, he replied, "Fine, I'll stay in a nearby hotel until then. I don't want to see your face." I wondered where he planned to get the money for the hotel from our joint account, but I decided not to ask him right then and remained silent. "If you leave any of your stuff, I'll throw it away," he said as he opened the door. I watched him leave and let out a deep sigh. I'm the one paying $1,800 a month for the house mortgage. Sometimes I wondered if he truly understood that. I pulled myself together and contacted our daughter Anna. "Anna, I need to leave the house for a bit. Can I stay with you for a while?" Sure. I'll come pick you up tomorrow." "Thank you so much," I replied, feeling grateful for her words. I dialed another number. I felt like George had been looking down on me, so I decided to give him a lesson. In the end, George had a tough experience. "My name is Sarah. I'm 51, and I spend my days working hard at work and at home. I live with my husband, George. One day, I met him through an acquaintance, and before I knew it, we were married. At 23, we were blessed with an angelic daughter, Anna. However, George hardly ever paid attention to Anna, and I was mostly the one taking care of her. Hey, play with Anna once in a while, I'd say." He carelessly responded, "That's a woman's job, right?" Yes, he had decided that housework was a woman's duty and wouldn't help. But Anna was such a good child, always helping me whenever I was tired. "Dad, if you're relaxing, help out. Housework is your mother's duty." Without hesitation, Anna retorted, "Then what's your duty? Mom works for both you and her." Even George couldn't resist helping a bit after hearing her genuine words. Now Anna has built a new life in a distant state, living happily with her husband's family. My parents passed away in an accident 5 years ago, and I had to let go of our beloved family home. George's parents live a bit far away, and we only see them at occasional family gatherings. They don't interfere with our lives and live peacefully. The relationship between George and me was, to put it mildly, complicated. Simply put, he's living day to day like a part-timer. "How's your current job?" I'd ask. "I quit again," he'd say. His nature is to quit at the slightest obstacle. Whenever there's a problem, he runs away quickly. At best, he stays at his job for 3 months. At worst, he quits on the first day. Because of this pattern, there aren't many companies willing to employ him long-term. So even at 56, he's stuck doing part-time jobs. We often fight over this. Don't he want to take things more seriously? I'd ask. "You're so persistent." "People just don't appreciate my abilities," he'd respond. George's educational background is impressive. He graduated from a renowned university. But one's worth isn't just about their educational background, and I believe he should utilize that impressive education in his work. But I sometimes doubt if he's truly leveraging his abilities. My background is different. I started working right after high school. During high school, my father fell, and I had to support our family financially. Thanks to that, I've become a reliable figure in my company, yet it seemed that George didn't appreciate my efforts. "You didn't even go to college, yet you complain about me whenever I voice my opinion," he'd say. So lately, I've been careful about what I say to him. Back when he was chasing his dreams, his eyes shone so brightly that I was captivated, just like stars. While pursuing his dream, he truly sparkled. But recently, that spark seems to have disappeared. I wonder what he thinks of me. Lately, I've been having thoughts like that more and more, even considering divorce. Then a surprising incident happened. I was a bit curious and checked our joint bank account. It's decreased by $2,000. Why? For someone like me who doesn't waste money, this amount was a shock. After all, I've been working hard to protect our household finances. So I asked him, "What did you use this $2,000 for?" He replied with an annoyed expression. "Actually, I gave it to my parents." I thought to myself, why? His parents, nearing 80, were really energetic and enjoyed doing volunteer work. I had never heard that they were in trouble, so I was surprised. I always considered his parents to be dependable. They've helped us in the past, but I never imagined they'd need our help. I couldn't hide my shock and surprise that he spent $2,000 for his parents. When I asked, "Why did you spend so much money?" he replied proudly, "Actually, my mother's birthday is coming up, so I decided to give her a surprise hot spring trip." "But why from our joint account?" I asked. He casually replied, "It's okay. It's all part of being filial." I was a bit angry and said, "Shouldn't you have used your own pocket money?" He's always like this, using the money I save up without any hesitation. Like this house, for instance. He committed to it without consulting me. When I was worried about the payments, he reassured me by saying, "You have a steady job, so it should be fine, right?" Even though the house was bought in my name, he seems to brag to his friends that it's his. Honestly, I've been feeling worn out by his attitude. "You're my wife. Just follow my directions," he said, looking displeased, and then he went to his room. Whenever something went amiss, he locked himself away. Left to ponder our problems, I would engage in chores, the money I diligently saved now used to cover our tight budget, as he consumed almost all my part-time job income. Despite my desire to escape this situation, I found myself sighing one day, memories of our recent fight still fresh. Unexpectedly, a call from my mother-in-law thanking us for the hot spring trip brought more shock. She disclosed that he had proposed that they live with us after their trip. Surprised, I asked, "Why did you suggest living together?" He said they're getting old, and it might be better to sell the family home and live together, she explained. I insisted such decisions should be made together, reminding him of our household situation. In anger, he snapped, "You're so annoying. If you're not satisfied, do whatever you want." Speechless, I witnessed him hit the table in anger. "All right, but I need time to pack. Can you wait until tomorrow?" I managed to reply. "It's okay. I wanted some space anyway. I'll stay at a hotel for the next couple of days," he replied hastily, concerned about where he would get the money for the hotel. I feared it would be from our joint account. As he left in a hurry, threatening to throw out any of my belongings left behind, I felt drained. "Don't you know that I'm paying a monthly mortgage of $1,800? I muttered to myself. Deciding to seek refuge, I contacted my daughter, Anna, who lives in another state. "Hello, Anna. You won't believe what happened," I began, and she responded with her usual kindness. As I explained the sudden arrival of his parents and his demand for me to leave, Anna expressed her shock. "That's troubling, but if there's any way I can help, let me know," she reassured. Her comforting words lightened my heart. I was wondering, can I stay at your place for a bit? "Of course, don't even ask. You're always welcome," Anna replied warmly. Grateful for her support, I took a deep breath. After hanging up, I decided to go to Anna's place, but it wouldn't end there. I had my own plans, so I made another call to solve one more problem. It seemed like he was underestimating me, and if that was the case, maybe I'd give him a little surprise. The next day, George found himself in a much more difficult situation than expected. His home, once a source of stress, now felt like a true sanctuary for the soul. For the first time in a while, I had a genuinely relaxing moment. Taking a break from work, I enjoyed some me time, basking in the warmth of my daughter and her husband's family, who warmly welcomed me. The bond within the family felt incredibly special, especially after my mother-in-law's passing. Even my little granddaughter, initially wary, reached out to play with me, her voice calling me Grandma oddly comforting. In the midst of this peaceful time, my mobile rang, and looking at the notification, I thought to myself, I knew it. I answered, and George, sounding frantic, asked, "What happened?" "The house is a mess." Suppressing a chuckle, I replied, "That's because, like you said, I removed almost everything." Perplexed, he inquired, "What do you mean, almost everything?" I explained that I had contacted a friend running a waste collection service, and they helped me clean out furniture and appliances. Recyclable items went to a trusted recycling shop, and non-recyclables were properly disposed of. Reminding him that I chose and bought most of the stuff in our house, I playfully teased, "Do you recall anything you bought with your own money?" Taking time to think, George replied, "You may be right," but the situation seemed a bit extreme to him. At that moment, Anna approached me, taking my phone with a smile, saying, "Mom, let me borrow this for a bit." Switching on the speaker, she addressed George. "Dad, it's Anna. It's been a while." Her cheery confirmation puzzled George, and with a serious expression, Anna asked, "Dad, why has it come to this? Mom has always been the backbone of our home and supported us. What about you?" Her words weighed heavy, and tension filled the room. Curious about George's response, I decided to be straightforward. "Enough. Tell Sarah I'm seriously considering a divorce." "Are you serious? What do you plan to do, Mom, if it comes to that?" George's voice carried sheer astonishment. My unexpected response seemed to catch him off guard. He appeared a bit too self-centered. "I'm open to a divorce, really," I reiterated, responding to his apparent disbelief. Recalling our marital life, I remembered how I took care of our finances while he spent freely. Money-related arguments were not uncommon. "It's okay. I get it. Just make sure to transfer the house's name," he said. "Sure, the house is yours now." "All right then. I'll prepare the necessary documents." "Thanks." After ending the call, Anna returned my phone. Concern showed on her face, but her smile was kind and understanding. "Mom, are you sure about the house? You bought everything with your salary, right?" "Well, there's nothing to worry about." Actually, when I told Anna the truth about the house, she burst out laughing. I explained, "Indeed, I acquired that house with my money, but there's still a mountain of unpaid mortgages. The amount of those mortgages is many times George's monthly salary. I can't imagine him paying that every month." "I see. You're really amazing, aren't you, Mom?" Anna praised. "I've been working behind the scenes a bit too, so Dad will probably get into a fix soon." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Actually, I've become very close with Grandpa and Grandma, so I get a lot of information." Anna winked playfully, flashing a mischievous grin. Unlike me, she highly valued her relationship with her grandparents and frequently kept in touch. After Anna reached out to her grandmother, things quickly escalated. My in-laws decided to cut their trip short and came to apologize to me. "Sarah, we're truly sorry. We should have explained our situation." They gently elaborated on the recent chaos. The decision about selling their family home was true, but the reason behind it was because they were planning to move into a senior facility. They were currently waiting for a room to open up in the retirement home, and for the brief interim, they needed a place to stay, which happened to be our house. Upon hearing their wishes, George suggested they all live together with him. Although my in-laws were worried about causing me inconveniences, George told them Sarah fully agrees. In fact, she suggested it. Thus, they seemed convinced to move in. However, I never agreed to any such thing. My relationship with my in-laws was quite ordinary. I would never make such a bold proposal. So, it was all Dad's cunning idea, Anne remarked, looking exasperated. My in-laws, resembling parents apologizing for their child's mischief, seemed deeply remorseful. Afterward, they were furious at George. Their eyes brimmed with the question, "Why would you do such a thing?" They concluded by seemingly cutting ties with their son, distancing themselves from him. Later, they deeply apologized to me and left in a somber mood. Honestly, I think my in-laws are decent people. They seemed financially stable, having aided in George's expensive university fees. "Hey, you think Grandma and Grandpa's parenting style is a bit too liberal?" Anna asked me curiously. "Why do you think that way?" I responded. "Well, they could see Dad not working, but they didn't say anything. Plus, he seems to have inherited their personality." True, George always appeared quite indifferent towards me. My in-laws seemed absorbed in their volunteer work and hobbies, drawing a line between them and our family. However, maybe that's not unusual. I was always worried about you, Anna, and occasionally called you. Perhaps my in-laws' leniency influenced George's selfish behavior, but George is an adult. He shouldn't let little things upset him and should act responsibly. It had only been a month since our divorce when my phone rang again. I noticed George's name, someone I considered part of my past, with a slight frown. I answered, "What now?" "We have nothing left between us." "Listen, it's about the house mortgage." Panic and confusion filled his voice. Apparently, he had received the next mortgage statement. I had diligently paid $1,800 every month, but he might have been unaware of the amount. "It says $1,800 a month. Unbelievable." "Yes, I've been paying it properly. You graduated from a good school, right? You can manage that, can't you?" I could understand his shock. George's income was just over $1,200 a month, and given his spending habits, he barely saved anything. Although most items in the house were gone, he managed with things he received from his parents. However, he wasn't good at housekeeping and ended up spending money on eating out and laundromats. For him, a mortgage surpassing his income would be tough. Are you surprised that I, a high school graduate, can pay $1,800? Well, kind of. You see, even as a high school graduate, I worked hard steadily, getting promotions. I realized the importance of perseverance. That's impressive, but it might be tough for me. It was your choice to be in this situation. Stop blaming others and take responsibility. When we divorced, we had clearly discussed the mortgage and other details. It was a given that George would pay for it if he continued to live in that house. By the way, his parents seemed to have moved to a senior facility. When George reached out for help, they firmly told him, "You're an adult. Take care of your own affairs." "Sarah, won't you reconsider? Let's start anew." "Wait, you're kidding, right? We can't be together anymore." "Then how am I supposed to pay off the mortgage?" "That's for you to figure out. When we were together, I paid for it, didn't I?" Hearing his frustrated voice, I thought to myself, do your best. His future decisions and actions were up to him. I changed my settings so that I wouldn't receive any more calls from him. I had just started on a new path, so being pulled back into the past was truly bothersome. "Hey, did you get any call from Dad?" Actually, yes. Despite never truly apologizing, he asked if we could get back together. I could see through his words, though. It's all about money. Oh, maybe that's why he contacted me too. After I rejected his proposal, it seemed he had been contacting Anna numerous times. Despite always being weak in front of Anna, him persistently trying to contact her might mean he was genuinely struggling. I told him that this is the result of his actions. Exactly. Also, now that you finally have the peace you deserve, Mom, I told him sternly not to cause any more trouble. Thank you so much, Anna. I'm so happy to see my daughter grow into such a considerate and wonderful woman. I felt proud of her. Hey, Mom. I've been wondering, do you know what Dad was spending his money on? Why do you ask? Didn't he frequently spend money on gambling? At that, I couldn't help but chuckle. George's income wasn't that great, to be honest. Now that I think about it, maybe he was sometimes grumpy because he lost money due to gambling. That's true. On the days he actually won, he would sometimes buy special treats. His personality was perhaps a bit simple, but I wonder why I even married him. I chuckled at the naivety of my past self. When my friend introduced me to him, he seemed to sparkle. But Anna is smart. She learned from my experiences and chose someone opposite of George, someone truly kind. Anna's husband is family-oriented, spends weekends with her and their daughter actively, and has a high position at his job, ensuring a stable life. He loves playing with his daughter during his free time and occasionally checks up on me. You really chose a good man. Do you think so, Mom? Thank you. As she spoke with a beaming smile, she looked genuinely happy. From now on, it's time for you to enjoy your life more. I'm getting older, though. I'm not sure where to start. Age is just a number, Mom. You can still find a lot of happiness ahead of you. Hearing Anna's words warmed my heart. I suddenly hoped for someone understanding, like Anna's father-in-law, to be my next partner in life. Just then, I heard my granddaughter calling out to play. "Grandma, come play with me." "Oh, have you been waiting to play with me? Let's play together." Surrounded by Anna's joyful family, I too was smiling. I'm glad that Anna is blessed with such a wonderful family. Changing the topic, Anna said, "It seems George faced financial difficulties and had to sell a house. He used the money to pay off some debts, but moved to a cramped apartment. He struggled to find a stable job, and his debts only grew. Eventually, he couldn't even pay rent and ended up living on the streets. One day, I heard shocking news that he was taken away by a shady group. His path was indeed a result of his own choices. George's parents felt deeply remorseful. They didn't want to burden me anymore. They sold their house and used their savings to pay for a facility. They also ensured their inheritance would go to me. I don't need this much money, I told them, but they insisted it was their apology. In the midst of all this, with a bit of financial freedom, I considered moving out of Anna's home. But, Mom, you can stay here. I certainly don't want to bother you and your family, Anna. Actually, my husband and I were talking about living together with you. Really? It seems you've always cared for me. After discussing it with her husband and father-in-law, they planned to invite me to live with them. And then I received the invitation at just the right time. So, Mom, don't be too concerned. Just have fun playing with the kids, okay? Thank you, Anna. My granddaughter had taken a real liking to me due to Anna's husband's background of being raised in a single-parent household with his father. He warmly welcomed me into their home, and his father-in-law also expressed his wish for me to live happily. With that kind gesture, I decided to move in with them. Previously, money was tight, so I had to work. But now, with the help of Anna, her husband, and her father-in-law, things have become much easier. And here's some exciting news. Anna is expecting her second child. In the meantime, I've been helping around the house, playing with my granddaughter, and spending my time that way. Anna's father-in-law also helps with household chores just like me, so we have a fun time together doing things around the house. Whenever I do something, the family always says thank you, and that makes me very happy. Unlike my previous husband, this family openly expresses their gratitude each time. I truly feel fortunate. When asked how I get along with my father-in-law, I replied with a smile. I want to spend my life with him forever. That's good. It feels like a new family, Anna said gently, rubbing her belly. With Anna in my life, everything has become much brighter. Meeting her might be the only thing I'm thankful for regarding George. Oh, with that thought, I'm motivated to do my best for my family today as well. Sarah, if you'd like, I want to walk through life with you from now on. How does that sound? Are you sure about me? If so, of course. Let's be together. I responded to his words like this. I've regained my confidence. I was on the verge of forgetting my own worth, but his words made me realize its value again. I believe that as a family, we'll face many happy moments and challenges together from now on, and that truly warms my heart.
My name is Sarah, and I'm married to Tom. We've been married for 2 years now. I really wanted to have kids by now, but it hasn't happened yet. I like my job, it makes me feel important, so I'm not in a rush to have kids. But Tom feels differently. He recently told me he's upset that we haven't had kids yet. How long until we have a baby? Please, hurry up, my mom can't wait, he said. I went to the hospital, but the doctors said nothing was wrong with me. If you want, we can get you checked up too, I suggested to Tom. You're saying it's my fault we can't have kids. It can't be me, Tom argued. How can you be so sure? Sometimes it's the men who have issues, I replied. I can't be the problem. Stop saying that, Tom insisted. Well, if neither of us has fertility problems, let's see it as a good thing and wait a bit longer, I suggested. Why are you going easy on yourself? My mom really wants to meet her grandkids soon, Tom kept insisting. Every time Tom sees his mom, she asks, "Is the baby here yet?" He's still refusing to get checked at the hospital, even though it's causing issues. He's sure he's not the reason we can't have kids. I got another checkup because I was worried, but everything seemed fine. Tom doesn't get that we only have one chance each month to have a baby. He keeps asking, "Are you ready for a baby yet?" I'm tired of him and Mom asking, "Are you ready for a baby yet?" Mom said the same thing today. She wants to see her grandchild's face soon, I complained. Again, "Please let's hurry up. Mom really wants it," Tom urged. "We can't rush this," I explained. Every time we talk, it feels like we end up in the same argument. We've been having fewer and fewer conversations lately. Maybe it's because we don't talk much, but it's causing a lot of problems like this, I reflected. "Mom's on her way," Tom suddenly announced. "Right now," I exclaimed. "Why does it matter? If she's coming, let me know so I can prepare." "You're talking too much," Tom snapped back. "She has a message for you," he added. "Is it about kids again?" I sighed. "I've had enough. I don't care anymore," Tom muttered. "That's what I hear every time I see her. It's your fault we can't have kids, so you need to explain it to her," I said, feeling frustrated. Just then, my mother-in-law walked in as we were talking. "I'm sorry to interrupt. Here, I brought this for you," she said, handing me something. "What is it?" I asked. "You can check them out yourself. They're a belly band and a lucky charm," she explained. "What's the belly band for?" I asked. "It's important to keep your stomach cool when trying to have a baby, so you should use it," she advised. "But it's too hot to wear a fuzzy belly band in the summer," I objected. "You're looking at it the wrong way. This room is too cold because of the air conditioning. It chills your stomach," she argued. "And how does this amulet work?" I asked. "It's a lucky charm from a famous temple for kids. After praying there, I heard that a celebrity had a baby. It seemed to bring good luck. So I went there yesterday despite the distance," she explained. "You didn't need to go that far," I said. "Don't worry just because you're more relaxed about this. As I've said before, I really want to see my grandkids. I went to the hospital, and it's not me," I repeated. Tom was sitting away from us, acting like he wasn't involved. "Why haven't you gotten pregnant yet?" my mother-in-law suddenly asked me. "I'm not sure why you're asking," I replied. "Why don't you try another hospital for a second opinion? Maybe a specialized hospital?" "I'll help you find one," she suggested. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure it's not Tom, so I can only think it's because of you," I responded. "Tom hasn't been checked yet." "How can you be so sure he's not infertile?" my mother-in-law asked. Because Tom, who seemed like he wasn't paying attention, interrupted the conversation. "Mom, don't say things that aren't necessary," he advised. Sorry, my mother-in-law stopped talking suddenly. "I think a package will be delivered by courier tomorrow, so please accept it," she said. "I just wanted to give you this today, so I'll leave now," my mother-in-law announced before leaving me with only a belly band and a lucky charm for the baby. The next day, when the package arrived, I couldn't help but laugh. Inside were all sorts of good luck charms for having a baby. "Your mom sent me a package. What was in it?" I asked Tom. "Pomegranates, herring roe, and peaches," he replied. "Why did she send those?" I wondered. "All three are seen as lucky foods that are supposed to bring good fortune for having kids," he explained. "I get it. Mom really wants to see her grandkids," I thought out loud. "I understand she's excited, but it feels a bit overwhelming," Tom remarked. "Why are you talking about Mom like that? She's genuinely thrilled about having a grandchild," Tom defended. "Don't you feel pressured too?" I asked. "Yeah, but I'm not worried. It's not my problem. It doesn't concern me," he replied. "What do you mean it doesn't concern you?" "It's our issue because we're together," I argued. "It's your problem that we can't have kids, so no, it's not my concern," he retorted. "It feels like it's my fault that we can't conceive, even though the hospital says there's nothing wrong with me. So why don't you go to another hospital for a thorough checkup like my mom suggested?" I proposed. "Why don't you ask her to help find a good hospital?" he suggested. "The hospital I went to is well known for fertility treatments. But maybe it's just famous, not actually good," I speculated. If you're suggesting that, why not ask your mom to find one? He suggested. Are you finally willing to do it? I asked. Yes, if you also get checked out, he agreed. Why should I go to the hospital? I questioned. I couldn't understand why Tom was so confident. Then he dropped a bombshell on me. I've never mentioned it before, but you've been suspicious for a while, and I'm tired of hiding it. So I'll tell you, Tom confessed. What is it? I asked, confused. I've actually been married before, Tom revealed. What? What do you mean? I exclaimed, shocked. I got divorced 2 years before marrying you, he admitted. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Well, I got divorced because my ex cheated on me. She didn't ask for child support or anything, so I didn't think it was important to mention, he explained. Are you saying you have children? I asked, bewildered. A son, yes. I haven't seen him since he was born after the divorce, he confessed. I'm lost. I don't understand what you're saying, I admitted. That proves I'm not incapable of having kids. That's why you were so sure it wasn't me, he pointed out. I'm hurt that you think it's me, but it's possible you became infertile in the 2 years after your divorce, I argued. You're still blaming others. You're the issue, so own up to it and do something about it, he accused. I'm not talking about admitting or not admitting. You're starting to annoy me, I shot back. In my 2nd year of marriage, I learned for the first time that Tom had been divorced and had a child. Even after hearing his story, I still wasn't completely convinced that I was to blame for our inability to have kids. I decided to dig deeper into Tom's past. I planned to ask for a divorce once I finished my research. I couldn't bear to stay with Tom any longer. I tried my best to avoid talking to him because he always said hurtful things to me. And of course, we never had intimate relations under such strange circumstances, so pregnancy was out of the question. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, unaware of our situation, continued to pressure me about having children. Then, one day, Tom approached me looking irritated. By now, I was accustomed to being treated with disdain. He spoke up. I've been thinking about getting a divorce. We don't talk anymore. All we do is fight, and we haven't been able to have kids no matter how long I wait, he declared. I was surprised by his sudden announcement, but I responded calmly. Okay, that's fine. What? Tom was puzzled by my response. He must have expected me to object. Here are the divorce papers. I've filled out all the necessary information already, he stated. What? Why are they already filled out? I asked, shocked. I filled them out so I could end things whenever I wanted. Do you want a divorce? He asked. Yes, I replied, only partly joking. I'm not joking. Do you really want this? He pressed. You said it yourself, I reminded him. I didn't think it would come to this. Did you expect me to beg you not to go through with it? He questioned. Well, we hardly talk anymore, so I thought maybe this was a chance for us to talk and fix things, I explained. Then why didn't you say that from the start? He asked. I wanted things to go back to how they were. But that's not possible, I replied. I'll divorce you right now if that's what you want, he offered. That's not what I want, I admitted. Despite Tom's offer for a divorce, he continued to complain. Our conversations went on, even though it seemed pointless. Then my mother-in-law arrived, right on time. What's going on? She asked. I went out with some friends and got you some gifts, she said, handing me another charm. I visited a different shrine known for childbirth, so I got you this. I've been praying there, and I'm sure it'll bring you good luck this time. We don't need this anymore, I declared. My mother-in-law's face lit up at my words, but I could tell she had misunderstood something. I had a feeling things were about to get complicated again. Well, does this mean you no longer need it? She asked eagerly. Finally, I guess it's because of all my efforts. I'm so relieved, she exclaimed. That's partly right. We need to go back to show our gratitude, she suggested. We? I asked. My mother-in-law stood before me, looking happy. Tom stood beside me, silent, avoiding eye contact. I knew my next words would disappoint my mother-in-law. What is it exactly? Please don't tell me you're about to say what I think you're going to say, she urged. We've decided to get a divorce, I announced. What? Divorce? I thought you were expecting a baby, she replied, shocked. We were just talking about it. Is this a sudden decision? She pressed. Not really. I've been thinking about it for a while, I explained. Are you leaving because you can't have kids? She speculated. No, that's not why I'm divorcing him, I clarified. Well, if you can't get pregnant, maybe it's better for him to divorce you and marry someone else, she suggested. It would be his third marriage, not second. You know that? I reminded her. I found out recently. His ex-wife got pregnant soon after they divorced, she revealed. Okay, I responded, feeling a mix of emotions. So I can only assume you're to blame. If you leave, I'll feel relieved, Tom's mother asserted. I understand. Tom has always been popular with women. He'll find someone soon. Hopefully, our next meeting will bring better news, I replied. Well, if you've made up your mind, get divorced soon. I'm leaving, you two sort out the rest, my mother-in-law declared before leaving, unaware of the whole truth. Once she left, Tom and I continued our conversation. Let's file for divorce right away. I want to start a family soon, and I realize I don't enjoy spending time with you anymore. Let's just get it over with, Tom suggested. Then do it quickly, I replied, handing him the papers to fill out. All I have to do is submit them. By the way, you'll have to leave the house when we divorce, I informed him. What? Why? Tom questioned. I've been making mortgage payments, have you forgotten? My parents paid off the loan and bought this house outright. You were just repaying my parents' loan, I clarified. Oh, so you're leaving because of this? Tom realized. We did have quite a bit of money saved up, he continued. I don't have any money saved, but didn't you say you had around 10 million? I reminded him. That's the money I saved before we got married, so it's not included in the property division, he explained. Right, I confirmed. Well, it doesn't matter. You're starting a new chapter, he remarked. Yes, and I'm also going to sue you and your mother for emotional distress, I declared. What? Why? Tom asked, surprised. For all the hurtful things you've said to me, treating me like I'm defective, I explained. But it's true, Tom argued. Do you really think I'm the reason we couldn't conceive? I challenged. It's obvious. I have a biological child, Tom insisted. That's when I revealed everything to Tom, shocking him. It turns out your child from your ex-wife might not be yours, I revealed. What are you talking about? Tom asked, bewildered. I got curious about Tom's past after learning about his previous marriage, so I decided to look for clues in his house. Eventually, I found a picture, I explained. Tom tends to hold onto old memories, and I found a few tucked away in a drawer in his work desk, I continued. I looked up his ex-wife's name on social media and found her profile right away. From there, I learned more about who she was, I revealed. Isn't this your ex-wife? I showed him a screen from social media. Tom looked surprised, but I wasn't shocked. Is the child in this picture really yours? I asked him. Tom seemed puzzled. I continued with my story. This child clearly looks foreign. I was looking at your ex-wife's social media, and her husband is from another country. I'm not familiar with him. It seems they're living abroad, I explained. I divorced my ex-wife quickly because she cheated on me, but before the divorce, she got pregnant and claimed it was our child. I'm pretty sure it was his child, Tom admitted. Really? I asked. In any case, you don't have any biological children, I pointed out. Could I be the reason you can't conceive? Tom wondered. That's likely. I went to another hospital, and my body was fine. I'm going to get checked out too, I replied. Will you drop the divorce and go through treatment with me if I'm the reason you haven't been able to conceive? Tom asked. Why would I do that? I've already filled out the divorce papers. I'll file them tomorrow, I replied. Don't say that. I still care about you, Tom confessed. You don't enjoy being around me, do you? You'll find someone new soon, just as your mother predicted, I remarked. Let's discuss it again, Tom suggested. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I want you to pack your things and leave this week, I insisted. Oh no, Tom muttered. You wanted a divorce, didn't you? I reminded him. I'll talk to my lawyer about alimony. He'll hear from us. The next day, I filed for divorce. Tom moved out reluctantly back to his parents' place. It seems Tom hasn't told his mother that he might be the reason for our infertility. She's been pushing him to remarry quickly after the divorce, hoping for grandchildren. If he does remarry, I feel sorry for his next wife. His mother will probably pressure her too for not having children. Since the divorce, I've thrown myself into my work. I sold the house, Tom, and I shared for a good price and repaid my parents the money they lent me, as well as the alimony I received from Tom and his mother. Now I'm living in an apartment. I've started dating a coworker who was supportive during my divorce. We were friends before, and now we're living together. If I marry this man, I hope we'll be blessed with children and that I'll find happiness again. My name is Sarah, and I'm married to Tom. We've been married for 2 years now. I really wanted to have kids by now, but it hasn't happened yet. I like my job, it makes me feel important, so I'm not in a rush to have kids. But Tom feels differently. He recently told me he's upset that we haven't had kids yet. How long until we have a baby? Please, hurry up, my mom can't wait, he said. I went to the hospital, but the doctors said nothing was wrong with me. If you want, we can get you checked up too, I suggested to Tom. You're saying it's my fault we can't have kids. It can't be me, Tom argued. How can you be so sure? Sometimes it's the men who have issues, I replied. I can't be the problem. Stop saying that, Tom insisted. Well, if neither of us has fertility problems, let's see it as a good thing and wait a bit longer, I suggested. Why are you going easy on yourself? My mom really wants to meet her grandkids soon, Tom kept insisting. Every time Tom sees his mom, she asks, is the baby here yet? He's still refusing to get checked at the hospital, even though it's causing issues. He's sure he's not the reason we can't have kids. I got another checkup because I was worried, but everything seemed fine. Tom doesn't get that we only have one chance each month to have a baby. He keeps asking, are you ready for a baby yet? I'm tired of him and Mom asking, are you ready for a baby yet? Mom said the same thing today. She wants to see her grandchild's face soon, I complained. Again, please let's hurry up. Mom really wants it, Tom urged. We can't rush this, I explained. Every time we talk, it feels like we end up in the same argument. We've been having fewer and fewer conversations lately. Maybe it's because we don't talk much, but it's causing a lot of problems like this, I reflected. Mom's on her way, Tom suddenly announced. Right now, I exclaimed. Why does it matter? If she's coming, let me know so I can prepare. You're talking too much, Tom snapped back. She has a message for you, he added. Is it about kids again? I sighed. I've had enough. I don't care anymore, Tom muttered. That's what I hear every time I see her. It's your fault we can't have kids, so you need to explain it to her, I said, feeling frustrated. Just then, my mother-in-law walked in as we were talking. I'm sorry to interrupt. Here, I brought this for you, she said, handing me something. What is it? I asked. You can check them out yourself. They're a belly band and a lucky charm, she explained. What's the belly band for? I asked. It's important to keep your stomach cool when trying to have a baby, so you should use it, she advised. But it's too hot to wear a fuzzy belly band in the summer, I objected. You're looking at it the wrong way. This room is too cold because of the air conditioning. It chills your stomach, she argued. And how does this amulet work? I asked. It's a lucky charm from a famous temple for kids. After praying there, I heard that a celebrity had a baby. It seemed to bring good luck, so I went there yesterday despite the distance, she explained. You didn't need to go that far, I said. Don't worry just because you're more relaxed about this. As I've said before, I really want to see my grandkids. I went to the hospital, and it's not me, I repeated. Tom was sitting away from us, acting like he wasn't involved. Why haven't you gotten pregnant yet? My mother-in-law suddenly asked me. I'm not sure why you're asking, I replied. Why don't you try another hospital for a second opinion? Maybe a specialized hospital? I'll help you find one, she suggested. You don't have to do that. I'm sure it's not Tom, so I can only think it's because of you, I responded. Tom hasn't been checked yet. How can you be so sure he's not infertile? My mother-in-law asked. Because Tom, who seemed like he wasn't paying attention, interrupted the conversation. Mom, don't say things that aren't necessary, he advised. Sorry, my mother-in-law stopped talking suddenly. I think a package will be delivered by courier tomorrow, so please accept it, she said. I just wanted to give you this today, so I'll leave now, my mother-in-law announced before leaving me with only a belly band and a lucky charm for the baby. The next day, when the package arrived, I couldn't help but laugh. Inside were all sorts of good luck charms for having a baby. Your mom sent me a package. What was in it? I asked Tom. Pomegranates, herring roe, and peaches, he replied. Why did she send those? I wondered. All three are seen as lucky foods that are supposed to bring good fortune for having kids, he explained. I get it. Mom really wants to see her grandkids, I thought out loud. I understand she's excited, but it feels a bit overwhelming, Tom remarked. Why are you talking about Mom like that? She's genuinely thrilled about having a grandchild, Tom defended. Don't you feel pressured too? I asked. Yeah, but I'm not worried. It's not my problem. It doesn't concern me, he replied. What do you mean it doesn't concern you? It's our issue because we're together, I argued. It's your problem that we can't have kids, so no, it's not my concern, he retorted. It feels like it's my fault that we can't conceive, even though the hospital says there's nothing wrong with me. So why don't you go to another hospital for a thorough checkup like my mom suggested? I proposed. Why don't you ask her to help find a good hospital? He suggested. The hospital I went to is well known for fertility treatments. But maybe it's just famous, not actually good, I speculated. If you're suggesting that, why not ask your mom to find one? He suggested. Are you finally willing to do it? I asked. Yes, if you also get checked out, he agreed. Why should I go to the hospital? I questioned. I couldn't understand why Tom was so confident. Then he dropped a bombshell on me. I've never mentioned it before, but you've been suspicious for a while, and I'm tired of hiding it. So I'll tell you, Tom confessed. What is it? I asked, confused. I've actually been married before, Tom revealed. What? What do you mean? I exclaimed, shocked. I got divorced 2 years before marrying you, he admitted. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Well, I got divorced because my ex cheated on me. She didn't ask for child support or anything, so I didn't think it was important to mention, he explained. Are you saying you have children? I asked, bewildered. A son, yes. I haven't seen him since he was born after the divorce, he confessed. I'm lost. I don't understand what you're saying, I admitted. That proves I'm not incapable of having kids. That's why you were so sure it wasn't me, he pointed out. I'm hurt that you think it's me, but it's possible you became infertile in the 2 years after your divorce, I argued. You're still blaming others. You're the issue, so own up to it and do something about it, he accused. I'm not talking about admitting or not admitting. You're starting to annoy me, I shot back. In my 2nd year of marriage, I learned for the first time that Tom had been divorced and had a child. Even after hearing his story, I still wasn't completely convinced that I was to blame for our inability to have kids. I decided to dig deeper into Tom's past. I planned to ask for a divorce once I finished my research. I couldn't bear to stay with Tom any longer. I tried my best to avoid talking to him because he always said hurtful things to me. And of course, we never had intimate relations under such strange circumstances, so pregnancy was out of the question. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, unaware of our situation, continued to pressure me about having children. Then, one day, Tom approached me looking irritated. By now, I was accustomed to being treated with disdain. He spoke up. I've been thinking about getting a divorce. We don't talk anymore. All we do is fight, and we haven't been able to have kids no matter how long I wait, he declared. I was surprised by his sudden announcement, but I responded calmly. Okay, that's fine. What? Tom was puzzled by my response. He must have expected me to object. Here are the divorce papers. I've filled out all the necessary information already, he stated. What? Why are they already filled out? I asked, shocked. I filled them out so I could end things whenever I wanted. Do you want a divorce? He asked. Yes, I replied, only partly joking. I'm not joking. Do you really want this? He pressed. You said it yourself, I reminded him. I didn't think it would come to this. Did you expect me to beg you not to go through with it? He questioned. Well, we hardly talk anymore, so I thought maybe this was a chance for us to talk and fix things, I explained. Then why didn't you say that from the start? He asked. I wanted things to go back to how they were. But that's not possible, I replied. I'll divorce you right now if that's what you want, he offered. That's not what I want, I admitted. Despite Tom's offer for a divorce, he continued to complain. Our conversations went on, even though it seemed pointless. Then my mother-in-law arrived, right on time. What's going on? She asked. I went out with some friends and got you some gifts, she said, handing me another charm. I visited a different shrine known for childbirth, so I got you this. I've been praying there, and I'm sure it'll bring you good luck this time. We don't need this anymore, I declared. My mother-in-law's face lit up at my words, but I could tell she had misunderstood something. I had a feeling things were about to get complicated again. Well, does this mean you no longer need it? She asked eagerly. Finally, I guess it's because of all my efforts. I'm so relieved, she exclaimed. That's partly right. We need to go back to show our gratitude, she suggested. We? I asked. My mother-in-law stood before me, looking happy. Tom stood beside me, silent, avoiding eye contact. I knew my next words would disappoint my mother-in-law. What is it exactly? Please don't tell me you're about to say what I think you're going to say, she urged. We've decided to get a divorce, I announced. What? Divorce? I thought you were expecting a baby, she replied, shocked. We were just talking about it. Is this a sudden decision? She pressed. Not really. I've been thinking about it for a while, I explained. Are you leaving because you can't have kids? She speculated. No, that's not why I'm divorcing him, I clarified. Well, if you can't get pregnant, maybe it's better for him to divorce you and marry someone else, she suggested. It would be his third marriage, not second. You know that? I reminded her. I found out recently. His ex-wife got pregnant soon after they divorced, she revealed. Okay, I responded, feeling a mix of emotions. So I can only assume you're to blame. If you leave, I'll feel relieved, Tom's mother asserted. I understand. Tom has always been popular with women. He'll find someone soon. Hopefully, our next meeting will bring better news, I replied. Well, if you've made up your mind, get divorced soon. I'm leaving. You two sort out the rest, my mother-in-law declared before leaving, unaware of the whole truth. Once she left, Tom and I continued our conversation. Let's file for divorce right away. I want to start a family soon, and I realize I don't enjoy spending time with you anymore. Let's just get it over with, Tom suggested. Then do it quickly, I replied, handing him the papers to fill out. All I have to do is submit them. By the way, you'll have to leave the house when we divorce, I informed him. What? Why? Tom questioned. I've been making mortgage payments, have you forgotten? My parents paid off the loan and bought this house outright. You were just repaying my parents' loan, I clarified. Oh, so you're leaving because of this? Tom realized. We did have quite a bit of money saved up, he continued. I don't have any money saved, but didn't you say you had around 10 million? I reminded him. That's the money I saved before we got married, so it's not included in the property division, he explained. Right, I confirmed. Well, it doesn't matter. You're starting a new chapter, he remarked. Yes, and I'm also going to sue you and your mother for emotional distress, I declared. What? Why? Tom asked, surprised. For all the hurtful things you've said to me, treating me like I'm defective, I explained. But it's true, Tom argued. Do you really think I'm the reason we couldn't conceive? I challenged. It's obvious. I have a biological child, Tom insisted. That's when I revealed everything to Tom, shocking him. It turns out your child from your ex-wife might not be yours, I revealed. What are you talking about? Tom asked, bewildered. I got curious about Tom's past after learning about his previous marriage, so I decided to look for clues in his house. Eventually, I found a picture, I explained. Tom tends to hold onto old memories, and I found a few tucked away in a drawer in his work desk, I continued. I looked up his ex-wife's name on social media and found her profile right away. From there, I learned more about who she was, I revealed. Isn't this your ex-wife? I showed him a screen from social media. Tom looked surprised, but I wasn't shocked. Is the child in this picture really yours? I asked him. Tom seemed puzzled. I continued with my story. This child clearly looks foreign. I was looking at your ex-wife's social media, and her husband is from another country. I'm not familiar with him. It seems they're living abroad, I explained. I divorced my ex-wife quickly because she cheated on me, but before the divorce, she got pregnant and claimed it was our child. I'm pretty sure it was his child, Tom admitted. Really? I asked. In any case, you don't have any biological children, I pointed out. Could I be the reason you can't conceive? Tom wondered. That's likely. I went to another hospital, and my body was fine. I'm going to get checked out too, I replied. Will you drop the divorce and go through treatment with me if I'm the reason you haven't been able to conceive? Tom asked. Why would I do that? I've already filled out the divorce papers. I'll file them tomorrow, I replied. Don't say that. I still care about you, Tom confessed. You don't enjoy being around me, do you? You'll find someone new soon, just as your mother predicted, I remarked. Let's discuss it again, Tom suggested. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I want you to pack your things and leave this week, I insisted. Oh no, Tom muttered. You wanted a divorce, didn't you? I reminded him. I'll talk to my lawyer about alimony. He'll hear from us. The next day, I filed for divorce. Tom moved out reluctantly back to his parents' place. It seems Tom hasn't told his mother that he might be the reason for our infertility. She's been pushing him to remarry quickly after the divorce, hoping for grandchildren. If he does remarry, I feel sorry for his next wife. His mother will probably pressure her too for not having children. Since the divorce, I've thrown myself into my work. I sold the house, Tom, and I shared for a good price and repaid my parents the money they lent me, as well as the alimony I received from Tom and his mother. Now I'm living in an apartment. I've started dating a coworker who was supportive during my divorce. We were friends before, and now we're living together. If I marry this man, I hope we'll be blessed with children and that I'll find happiness again.